You know, we are reflectors. We are tied to the moon, but not only are we tied to the moon, we're tied to all of outer space. This is what makes us different and unique. But since we're able to have this ability to understand the dual nature of this human life, we're naturally intuitive. We naturally see bigger picture things. The problem is that there aren't many resources to help the reflectors to be like, hey, this is who you are. Hey, this is what it means to be a reflector. You know, sometimes I like to think that the human design system itself was created pretty much for 99% of the world. I mean, if you go onto the website or you think about the human design system, there's so many more resources for these other types of beings, you know, for generators or projectors. So naturally, there is just more information and more resources that these other types in the human design system just naturally already have, which is why you don't see many reflectors teaching the human design system, because there's really not a lot that I can take from the human design system and bring it to you to help you understand yourself. Because what you need to do if you're a reflector and you're just finding out that you are a reflector, you have to do deconditioning work. Now, when you say deconditioning work, what does that even mean? Well, it means that, you know, you've been conditioned in certain areas of your life, and really the only way you're going to effectively decondition, you have to incorporate psychology. So as you're doing this deconditioning, you have to use psychology. Now, psychology already in itself is like not really a fun topic for certain people, because to really understand psychology, you have to understand that it too is designed for 99% of the world. And, you know, when you're reading psychology, you're not going to find in a psychology book of, okay, you're being inconsistent, or you have this lack of focus because of the moon. No, they're going to give you a diagnosis. They're going to give you all of these things, and then you're going to end up like me, where I spent over 10 years in fucking therapy trying to figure out what the hell was wrong with me. And the only thing that made sense or that clicked was whenever I found the human design system, and I was like, oh, that's it. You know, the only consistent part of me is being inconsistent. So I had to learn, how am I going to use this inconsistency to my advantage? And the only way that I was able to do that for myself was to write down everything that I was going through, journal down my thoughts and my feelings as often as I could, from day to day. All throughout the day I would write things down, just trying to find out what was I focusing on. So this is where I want to help reflectors, because if you're just finding out you're a reflector, you're going to go through this whole process and you're really not going to get good resources. You're not going to get good resources because you're not going to really be led into this whole self-discovery or self-analysis thing. Because if you don't already have self-analysis, you don't already do self-reflective, you have no idea even what conditioning is, then you might end up feeling more lost knowing that you're a reflector than what you did whenever, finding out you're a reflector. And I don't want to see that happening to anybody that finds out that they are a reflector. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to create a book, and not only a book, because I don't want to say it's a book. It's not a book. It's a journal to help guide you to wander the moon, so that way you can understand, parts of yourself. But also like a group, because I'm here. I'm here to answer questions, to help people. So I want to make a Facebook group. Join the Facebook group, just so that way you can connect with other people that are reflectors. And I think this is so important that reflectors come together, because first of all, we already have these amazing abilities, these amazing gifts, right, that make us not only spiritual, but if you want to talk about hierarchies in the world that we live in, reflectors were meant to be the natural judges, to be the natural people in charge, to be just the go-to people for when people are having issues. We see things, we have that connection, we know what you're already feeling simply by being in your presence. But if you are new, then you just find out you're a reflector, you probably don't even know how. When you plug into somebody's aura, and that's the thing about reflectors too, when you're plugging into somebody's aura, you have to know whether or not that's yours or theirs. And there's no way you're going to be able to tell whether it's something that's you or if it's something that's them, unless you have this self-awareness skill. You know yourself. Like, oh yeah, I know this is my feeling. And then whenever you're able to feel somebody else's anger, any negative emotion or their feelings, or, whenever you're able even to pick up on somebody's hurt, that you don't identify that as your own. And when you're able to identify somebody else's hurt, you also have to understand whether or not it's part of your karma to act or not to act. And when you're very empathetic and you can feel other people's pains, naturally it's like, oh, I really want to do something about that. Reflectors can fall into that trap. And as a reflector, this is how you get caught up in difficult relationships, codependent relationships, or narcissistic relationships, because you can feel that other person's pain and you think that you can help them. But you can't really help them unless you have this self-awareness skill, this self-analysis skill, this self-identification of who you are as a human being, right? It's a human part of you. Then you're able to distinguish this between, what your human design is, and then also this other gift of spirituality or whatever that just kind of naturally shines through. It naturally develops as you're doing self-awareness and self-identity work. So that's kind of my goal here. That's what I want to do, is to help navigate people that find out they're a reflector and give them the resources that they need, instead of going through the whole human design system and finding out that there's really not a lot of resources for you anyway. If you also wanted to go further deep into the human design system, then you can learn about the planetary transits and when certain gates are activated and so forth. Now, the reason why I don't recommend that method consistently is because what the moon speaks to you is so much more important than anything else that the human design offers, right? Because the things that are unconscious to you, understand those parts. I do recommend, looking and seeing and getting analysis of what those gates mean, what is defined in your chart. But as far as the planetary transits and knowing what parts of you are activated because, say, Saturn's in a specific gate, or if the sun's in a specific gate, I think that's great too. If you wanted to do that, go ahead. But the biggest thing here, and this is specifically, like I said, for reflectors, is to monitor the moon and do self-analysis work. Write it down, because you're going to have to go back and reflect upon it. So if you write down whatever was going on a certain specific day, 2 months later, you go back and you look at that, you're going to learn so much more about yourself than reading about, oh, you have this gate activated, so it means this and this and this. No. You're going to gain so much more by writing down everything that you're going through and thinking about in terms of what's going on during that day because of the moon position in your mind. And do this over a month or 2 months, or, do it consistently. And I know it's okay, well, wait, we're not consistent, which means, yeah, you're probably not going to write in this thing every day. That's fine. And because everybody is uniquely designed, it's going to affect you differently. So that's why I say that if you're a reflector, you just find out you're a reflector. This strategy as a reflector, I feel is the most important thing that any reflector can do. So that's it. That's what I gotta say about the reflectors.